The price of pride. Valen stood before the contract chamber's crystalline display, her iridescent scales shifting from deep blue to a troubled violet as she studied the details floating before her. In 3 centuries of serving the Nexarian Assassins Guild, she had never seen a bounty this high for what appeared to be such an insignificant target. 2 billion credits, she whispered, her triple-jointed fingers tracing the holographic numbers. For a human scientist. The target's image rotated slowly in the air. Dr. Sarah Chen, quantum physicist, currently stationed at Europa Research Station. The human looked unremarkable. Dark hair pulled back severely, eyes focused on something beyond the camera's reach, laboratory coat wrinkled from too many hours of wear. Nothing about her appearance suggested she warranted such an extraordinary sum. The chamber's AI spoke in its characteristic crystalline tones. Guild records indicate 17 previous contracts issued for human targets in the past solar cycle. 0 successful completions. 0 survivors among contracted assassins. Valen's scales rippled with amusement. 17 failures. Impossible. The guild doesn't fail. Correction. The AI chimed. The guild had never failed until encountering human targets. Would you like to review the last transmission from Senior Assassin, creaks before their disappearance? Play it, Valen commanded, her inner eyelids narrowing. A holographic recording materialized. Creaks, one of the guild's most legendary hunters, their scales a panic white. They're not what we thought. Not primitive at all. The humans, they can see. The transmission dissolved into static. Valen dismissed the recording with a gesture. Primitive fear tactics. Humans are barely a century into their spacefaring age. They discovered warp drive in the ruins of a precursor outpost. They have no natural defenses, no significant technological advantages. They're soft-skinned prey who got lucky. The AI's tone shifted to what almost sounded like concern. The Guild's preliminary analysis suggests humans may possess undocumented capabilities. Caution is strongly advised. Would you like to review the list of missing assassins? No. Valen's scales flushed a confident gold. I've heard enough. I'm taking the contract. Protocol requires me to inform you that the standard warning message must be sent to the target, offering them the opportunity to pay double the contract price for their life. Valen waved a hand dismissively. Send it. They never take the option anyway. The AI fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before speaking again. Warning message sent. Response received. That was unusually fast. Display it. The message appeared in the air. Dear esteemed hunter, thank you for the professional courtesy of your warning. I decline the opportunity to purchase my survival. However, I feel ethically obligated to extend the same courtesy to you. There is still time to withdraw from this contract. The previous 17 assassins made the mistake of believing they understood what they were facing. They were wrong. We are not what you think we are. This is not a threat, but a genuine warning issued out of compassion. Run. Regards, Dr. Sarah Chen, 50. Valen's scales rippled with various colors as she read the message twice. Most prey begged. Some tried to bribe. A few faced their fate with dignity. But she had never received a warning from a target before. The sheer audacity of it sent a thrill through her nervous system. Fascinating, she murmured. The human actually believes she's dangerous. Final confirmation required, the AI prompted. Do you accept this contract, understanding that the Guild cannot guarantee successful extraction in the event of complications? Valen's scales settled into a deep, determined crimson. I accept. Prepare my ship for immediate departure to Europa Station. I want to meet this human who thinks she can intimidate an Nexarian hunter. The AI's response held a note of what might have been resignation. Contract accepted. Ship preparation initiated. Valen, senior hunter of the Nexarian Guild. Good hunting, and may the void guard your path. As Valen strode from the chamber, her mind was already analyzing approach vectors and infiltration strategies. But deep in her secondary brain, A tiny voice wondered why the AI had invoked the ancient prayer for the dead. It wasn't until much later that she recognized it for what it was, not a blessing, but a eulogy. The journey to Europa would take 3 standard days. Valen spent them studying everything known about human physiology and behavior. The more she learned, the more her confidence grew. Humans were like children playing with technology they'd barely understood. Their bodies were fragile, their senses limited, their reactions slow by galactic standards. Their only remarkable trait seemed to be their rapid reproduction rate. They had spread to dozens of worlds in their brief time among the stars. Yet something nagged at her secondary brain. If humans were so primitive, why had 17 of her fellow hunters vanished while pursuing them? The logical part of her mind dismissed it as coincidence. Perhaps the humans had simply gotten lucky, or the missing assassins had made amateur mistakes. But instinct, honed over centuries of successful hunts, whispered that she was missing something vital. On the final approach to Europa Station, Valen activated her ship's stealth systems and began her pre-hunt meditation. Her scales shifted through the ritual colors: battle red for courage, void black for stealth, silver for swift victory. But when she opened her eyes, she found her scales had settled into warning purple without her conscious intent. She pushed the concern aside. She was Valen, senior hunter of the Nexarian Guild. No prey had ever escaped her, and no human scientist would be the first. Still, as her ship docked silently at Europa Station, she found herself remembering Dr. Chen's warning. "We are not what you think we are." Valen was about to discover exactly what that meant. Calculated risks. Europa Station hung in the void like a silver spider's web, its crystalline structures refracting Jupiter's distant light. Valen's infiltration had gone flawlessly. Her changeolionic scales and modified genetics allowed her to pass as a Centaurian researcher, a species similar enough to her own that no one looked twice. 3 days of observation had yielded a disturbing pattern. Dr. Chen never followed the same route twice. She varied her schedule randomly, took different paths to her lab, ate at irregular intervals. It was almost as if, "She knows she's being hunted," Valen muttered to herself, watching through the lab's transparent walls as her target worked. Her scales shifted to thoughtful blue as she analyzed Chen's movements through her cybernetic enhancement overlay. The human scientist moved with deliberate precision, her hands dancing over quantum manipulation controls that even Valen's advanced species considered dangerous to work with directly. Most races used AI interfaces for quantum experiments, but humans insisted on maintaining direct control. It was either breathtaking courage or stunning foolishness. Valen's enhanced hearing picked up fragments of Chen's dictation. Trial 847 demonstrates consistent quantum entanglement at the macroscopic level. The consciousness interface is stable. We're ready to begin phase 2 off. The human suddenly stopped, her head tilting slightly as if listening to something. Then Chen looked directly at Valen's observation position and smiled. Valen's scales involuntarily flashed white with shock before she could control them. It was impossible. She was behind a one-way observation panel, her presence masked by the station's best stealth technology. No human's primitive senses could have detected her. "Would you like to come in?" Chen's voice came through clear on Valen's audio pickups. "We both know why you're here. We might as well discuss it civilized." Valen remained motionless, her training warring with her curiosity. This had to be a trap, yet her target's confidence was unnerving. After 17 failed assassination attempts, was it possible the humans had developed some kind of countermeasure? "Your stealth field has a quantum signature," Chen continued, still working on her experiments as if discussing the weather. "It's quite sophisticated, but it creates tiny distortions in the quantum probability field. Most species never notice because they don't work directly with quantum mechanics. We do. Did your guild's intelligence not mention that?" Valen's secondary brain was screaming warnings now. The human wasn't just aware of her presence. She understood technology that should have been centuries beyond her species' capability. More disturbing still, she seemed completely unafraid, making a decision that went against 3 centuries of training. Valen stepped out of concealment. Dr. Chen, you are either very brave or very foolish. Neither, actually. Chen didn't look up from her work, just aware of capabilities your species hasn't discovered yet. Did you ever wonder why humans advanced so quickly after finding that precursor technology? You got lucky, Valen said, moving closer. Her toxin injectors were primed, ready to deploy at microsecond notice. Found the right ruins at the right time. Chen's laugh was surprisingly warm. Is that what your histories tell you? That we just happened to stumble upon working warp drive technology? Did no one question why humans were able to understand and replicate precursor tech when even the oldest spacefaring races struggled with it? A tendril of unease worked its way through Valen's confidence. You had help. Other species provided technological assistance. No, Chen interrupted, finally turning to face the assassin. We didn't need help. We were ready. We'd been ready for a long time. We just needed the key to unlock what was already there. Valen's scales rippled with confusion. What are you talking about? Evolution doesn't just happen to bodies, Valen. It happens to minds too. Consciousness evolves. Did you know humans are the only species that can perceive quantum probability fields without technological assistance? We thought everyone could at first. Took us decades to realize we were unique. You're lying, Valen said, but her secondary brain was processing implications that her primary mind didn't want to acknowledge. Chen gestured at her quantum manipulation controls. Why do you think we insist on direct interface with quantum systems? Why do you think we spread so fast once we reach the stars? We're not using the technology, Valen. We're communicating with it. The precursors didn't leave us their tech. They left us a message, one only we could read. Valen's toxic injectors deployed automatically as Chen stepped closer, but the human didn't even flinch. Instead, she smiled again. That same confident, almost pitying smile. Would you like to see what the message said? Before Valen could respond, the quantum probability fields around them shifted. Reality rippled like water, and for one terrible moment, the assassin saw what the previous 17 hunters had seen before they vanished. The truth about what humanity had become. Her scales went death-white, and her secondary brain began emergency shutdown procedures to protect her sanity. The last thing she heard before consciousness fled was Chen's voice, oddly gentle. We tried to warn you to run. The hunter's revelation. Valen awoke in what appeared to be a medical bay, her scales cycling through disoriented patterns of gray and amber. Her cybernetic enhancements were offline, leaving her feeling blind and vulnerable. Most disturbing of all, she couldn't access her secondary brain, the backup consciousness that all Nexarians relied on for survival. We had to isolate your secondary consciousness. Dr. Chen's voice came from somewhere nearby. It was trying to shut down your primary brain to protect you. A fascinating evolutionary adaptation, by the way. 2 separate but linked minds. Valen tried to move, but her limbs felt distant, disconnected. What? What did you show me? Reality. Chen stepped into view, still wearing her laboratory coat, or rather, reality as we see it. As we've always seen it, your species perceives 3 spatial dimensions plus time. We see more. The quantum probability fields are like colors to us, layers of possibility that we can read and influence. Impossible, Valen whispered, but the word felt hollow. Her memories of what she'd witnessed before blacking out were fragmented, but one image remained clear. She had seen Chen existing in multiple states simultaneously, consciousness spread across probability itself. You're not just scientists, Valen said slowly, her scales shifting to the deep purple of dawning comprehension. The Quantum Research Lab. It's a cover. Chen pulled up a chair, her expression thoughtful. Not exactly. We do real research here. But you're right. It's not just about advancing technology. We're trying to understand ourselves, what we're becoming. The precursors didn't just leave us technology, Valen. They left us a gift, the ability to perceive and manipulate quantum reality directly. They seeded it into our DNA millions of years ago, waiting for our consciousness to evolve enough to access it. The missing assassins, Valen's scales rippled with horror. What happened to them? They exist. Chen's voice was gentle but firm. Just. Not in the probability layer you can perceive. When they attacked, survival instinct kicked in. Humans automatically shift aggressive entities into parallel probability states. We don't even mean to do it sometimes. It's like a reflex. Valen's primary mind struggled to process the implications. You're saying humans can. What? Push attackers into other dimensions. Close enough, though that's oversimplifying it. We don't really have language to describe quantum consciousness manipulation in traditional terms. Your guild keeps sending assassins because they don't understand what happened to the others. They're not dead, Valen. They're just elsewhere, still attempting their missions in probability tracks where they think they might succeed. The horror of it sank in. They're trapped in loops, aren't they? Endlessly trying to complete their contracts. Until they choose to stop, yes. Chen sighed. We can't pull them back. The probability shift is a defensive mechanism. We haven't learned to reverse it yet. That's partly what our research here is about. We're trying to understand our own capabilities better, learn to control them. Valen's scales had settled into a muted gray of resignation. Why are you telling me this? Why not just shift me away like the others? Because you did something they didn't. Chen leaned forward. You chose to talk first. You showed curiosity instead of just attacking. That suggests you might be capable of understanding what we're offering. Offering. Valen's scales flickered with surprise. We need intermediaries. Species who can help others understand what humanity has become and what we're trying to prevent. The precursors didn't just give us these abilities for no reason. They were preparing us, preparing all sentient life, for something coming. Something they saw in the quantum probability fields. Chen stood and walked to a window overlooking Jupiter's swirling storms. We're not your enemies, Valen. We're not trying to dominate or conquer. We're trying to prepare. All those colonies we're establishing, they're not just for expansion. They're sensor arrays, probability monitors stretching across the galaxy. We can see something coming, something that exists outside normal space-time. The precursors saw it too, but they couldn't fight it. So they chose us, modified us, knowing our consciousness would evolve in a way that might give us a chance. Valen felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. What is coming? We don't know exactly. The probability fields get chaotic beyond a certain point, but we know it's vast, it's ancient, and it consumes consciousness itself. The precursors called it the void thought, and it's waking up. Chen turned back to Valen, her eyes reflecting something the assassin couldn't quite perceive. So I'll ask you directly. Will you help us prepare the galaxy for what's coming? Or should I send you to join your fellow hunters in their probability loops? Valen's scales shifted through a complex pattern of colors as she considered everything she'd learned. Her entire understanding of reality, of humanity's place in the galaxy, had been shattered. Yet in its place, a larger, more terrifying truth had emerged. Finally, her scales settled into the gold of decision. I will help. But I have one question. Why didn't you just tell the galaxy the truth from the beginning? Chen's laugh was tired. We tried, but how do you explain to species who can't see quantum reality that it exists? How do you warn people about a threat they can't perceive? We needed to advance quietly, prepare secretly, until we found allies who could understand. The assassination contracts. We arranged them. Each one was a test, looking for individuals capable of comprehending what we've become. Valen's scales flickered with sudden understanding. The contract price, it was never about killing you. No, Chen smiled. It was about finding you. The choice. The quantum research lab hummed with energy as Valen watched Dr. Chen calibrate the consciousness interface. Her scales had settled into an uneasy mixture of anticipation gold and fear white. What the human was proposing seemed impossible, yet after everything she'd witnessed, impossible had become a meaningless concept. The process is relatively simple, Chen explained, adjusting holographic controls that seem to exist in multiple states simultaneously. We can temporarily extend your consciousness into quantum space. You'll be able to see what we see, understand what we're facing. But I have to warn you, there's no going back from this knowledge. Valen's primary mind raced through combat scenarios out of habit, even though she'd already accepted the futility of traditional tactics against humans. The other 17 assassins, you offered them this choice too. No. Chen's hands danced through probability fields Valen could barely perceive. They attacked immediately, triggering our defensive shifts. You're the first to make it this far, though technically, you're still under contract to kill me. Valen's scales rippled with what might have been amusement. I don't think my guild's payment would be worth much against the void thought. Perspective is everything. Chen stepped back from the interface. Ready? Wait. Valen's scales shifted to inquiry blue. You said humans can't reverse the probability shifts that trapped the other assassins, but you're offering to expand my consciousness. How is that different? Chen smiled, and for a moment Valen thought she saw overlapping versions of the expression across multiple probability states. We can't undo defensive shifts because they're instinctive, powered by survival fear. This is different. A controlled expansion of consciousness. We've done it successfully with a few others who showed potential, mostly quantum physicists who'd already begun to glimpse the truth. And they all agreed to help. Once they saw what was coming. Yes. Chen's expression grew serious. The void thought isn't just another alien entity, Valen. It's the antithesis of consciousness itself. Imagine a thought so vast and empty it consumes all other thoughts. The precursors called it the Great Unmaking. Valen's scales shuddered into fear patterns before she could control them. And they chose humans to fight this thing. Why? Because we were the right kind of wrong. Chen laughed softly. Most species evolve logically, their consciousness developing in predictable patterns. But humans? We're chaos engines. Our consciousness developed in strange ways, making leaps that didn't make sense. The precursors saw that potential and enhanced it, giving us the ability to perceive and manipulate quantum fields. They turned our greatest weakness, our unpredictability, into our greatest strength. Valen considered this. Her species prided themselves on logical, methodical thinking. The idea that chaos could be an advantage was disturbing. And now you want to share this gift with others. We have to. Humanity alone can't fight what's coming. We need allies who can see what we see, who can help us prepare. The void thought exists across all probability states. Fighting it will require a unified response across multiple layers of reality. Chen gestured at the consciousness interface. This is your last chance to walk away. I can't guarantee your mind will handle the expansion. Some candidates fracture. And even if you succeed, you'll never see reality the same way again. Valen's scales shifted through a complex pattern of colors before settling into the deep crimson of decision. My entire life has been about taking contracts to end lives. Maybe it's time I took one to save them instead. She stepped toward the interface. Around her, reality seemed to shiver, as if acknowledging the weight of the moment. Will it hurt? Only your understanding of everything you thought you knew. Chen's hands moved through probability fields, making final adjustments. Ready? Valen's scales rippled one last time before steadying. Do it. The interface activated, and consciousness expanded like a supernova. Valen saw, truly saw, for the first time. The quantum probability fields Chen had spoken of weren't just visible, they were breathtaking. Reality wasn't a single thread, but an infinite tapestry of possibilities, each one alive with potential. She saw herself existing across multiple states, saw the branching paths of every decision she'd ever made. And in the distance, at the edges of comprehension, she saw it, a vast nothingness that consumed possibility itself, an unthought waiting to unthink everything that was or could be. The void thought stirred in its cosmic slumber, and Valen understood with terrible clarity why the precursors had been so desperate to prepare a defense. When the interface deactivated, Valen found her scales had shifted to a color she'd never displayed before, a deep, resonant purple that seemed to exist in multiple probability states at once. She looked at Chen with new eyes, seeing the quantum fields that flowed around the human like auroras. "Now you understand," Chen said softly. "Yes." Valen's voice was barely a whisper. "What do we do now?" "Now." Chen's smile flickered across probability states. "Now we prepare for war. A war unlike any the galaxy has ever seen. A war for consciousness itself. And our first task is to find more like you, others who can understand what we're facing. The void thought is coming, Valen. The only question is, will the galaxy be ready when it arrives?" Awakening. 3 months after her consciousness expansion, Valen stood before the Nexarian Assassins Guild Council, her scales shimmering with their new quantum-touched purple. The chamber felt smaller now, its crystalline displays primitive compared to the probability fields she could perceive flowing around her. "You abandon your contract." The Guild Master's scales flickered with disapproval red. "You violate our most sacred protocols. And now you return demanding an audience." "Not demanding," Valen replied calmly. "Offering. What I learned on Europa Station changes everything. The contracts on humans, they're not what you think. They're tests," another council member interrupted. "We've already deduced this. The humans are identifying potential threats." "No," Valen's scales rippled with urgency. "They're identifying potential allies. Every assassin sent was chosen for specific traits: intelligence, adaptability, the capacity to comprehend paradigm shifts. The humans aren't our enemies. They're recruiting." The council chamber erupted in color patterns of disbelief and outrage. Valen waited patiently, watching probability fields shift and dance around the gathered Nexarians. 3 months ago, she would have seen only their physical forms. Now she saw so much more: the quantum echoes of their thoughts, the branching possibilities of their decisions. "Recruiting for what?" the Guild Master demanded. Valen's scales settled into truth silver. "A war. One that will determine the fate of consciousness itself. The humans, they can see things we can't. Or rather, they could see things we couldn't. They've found a way to share their perception." She gestured, and suddenly the probability fields became visible to everyone in the chamber. The council members' scales flashed shock-white as reality seemed to fracture and multiply around them. Valen had spent weeks learning to project quantum awareness from Dr. Chen. The ability to share humanity's gift was crucial to their plans. "By the void," someone whispered. "What is this?" "Reality," Valen said softly. "As it truly exists. And in the distant quantum fields, something is stirring. Something that threatens all conscious life. The humans call it the void thought. The precursors saw it coming and chose humanity to be our defenders, modifying their consciousness to perceive and manipulate quantum reality." The projection faded, leaving the council in stunned silence. Valen continued. "The 17 missing assassins. They're trapped in probability loops because they attacked instead of listening. But we can still save them. The humans have learned to reverse the defensive shifts, but they need our help. They need all of us. Why should we believe this?" The Guild Master's scales showed skepticism orange. "Why should we trust humans?" "Because they trusted me." Valen's scales shifted to memory blue. "They could have shifted me away like the others. Instead, they showed me the truth and offered a choice. Now I'm offering you the same choice." She reached into a quantum pocket, a trick Chen had taught her, and withdrew a data crystal. "This contains coordinates for quantum consciousness expansion facilities across human space. The humans are asking the Guild to help identify candidates from all species who might be capable of understanding what we face. In return, they'll teach us to see and fight in quantum reality. And if we refuse? Someone asked. Valen's scales rippled with grim determination. Then humanity will fight alone. And we'll all have to hope they succeed. The void thought doesn't distinguish between species, between hunter and prey. It consumes all consciousness, all possibility. The precursors knew this. It's why they chose humanity. Not because humans were the strongest or smartest, but because they were the most adaptable, the most willing to embrace chaos and change. She looked around the chamber, meeting each council member's gaze. I was sent to kill a human. Instead, I found a truth that changes everything. The question isn't whether to trust humans anymore. The question is, when the void thought comes, will we be ready to stand with them? The council chamber erupted in a cascade of scale colors as arguments broke out. But Valen remained still, watching probability fields shift and flow. In some quantum states, she saw the council accept her offer immediately. In others, they debated for days. In a few dark possibilities, they rejected it entirely. But in the most likely probability stream, the one she could feel solidifying around them, she saw the future she and Chen had worked toward. She saw her guild transforming from hunters to recruiters, seeking out those with the potential to perceive quantum reality. She saw consciousness itself evolving across the galaxy, species by species, mind by mind. The void thought was coming, but when it arrived, it wouldn't find a galaxy of scattered, isolated consciousnesses. It would find a unified defense, led by humanity but fought for by all. The greatest hunt in history was about to begin, not for profit or pride, but for survival itself. Valen's scales settled into the deep, resonant purple that had become her new normal. Around her, probability fields danced with potential, and somewhere in the quantum distance, a human scientist smiled across reality itself. The war for consciousness was about to begin.